Everyone, so today I want to help teach you how to learn the art of tarot. I'm hoping that these tips and tools will really help you on your path to give you some confidence and a lot of clarity, and also strengthen your intuition. Now, if you clicked on this video and you're expecting to learn what each meaning of each card is, then this isn't the right video for you. There are so many videos out there on YouTube where you can learn the meaning behind each card, and maybe I'll make that one day, but this is more my style of how I read tarot, the steps that I take, and kind of like what goes through my mind when the messages come through. So welcome back, everybody. If you're new to the channel, my name's Megan. I do lots of videos on spiritual content and I have a ton of pick-a-card readings, but this is my first video on how to learn tarot. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so the first step to learning tarot is just to study. Like, what I did is I bought a deck, and I didn't buy a traditional tarot deck. I always tell people, whatever deck you're going to buy the deck that with the images that you love the most, because you're going to be working with that artwork daily. So if you want something more modern, or maybe you like the classical or Rider-Waite tarot, then find something that you just love to look at. Once you have your deck, study. I like to start, I think it's really smart if you're still starting to learn, not to do reversals in the beginning. Just learn the cards in their upright position, because there's 72 cards in a tarot deck, and learning the upright and reversal meanings is just a lot. And as you continue to learn tarot, you'll get to a point, this is what happened with me in one of my readings, where one of the cards came out in reverse, and I knew I had to read it as a reversal. But in the beginning, just stick with the basics. There are so many different meanings to each card. It's not like you learn 72 meanings, it's hundreds of meanings. So most tarot decks come with a guidebook. So I would really just study the guidebook and then go on YouTube and find videos where people describe the meanings behind the cards and write down for each card 3 to 4 meanings. I wouldn't do more than that at the beginning just because it would be too overwhelming. And study them. Study them like you're in school. Study them like you have to take a test. Make flashcards. Another thing you can do is read for yourself every day, especially in the beginning. This was so important for me. And what I would do is I would take a tarot deck. You know, I would shuffle, and everybody has a different way of displaying the cards. I really like it when they fall out, when I'm just shuffling and one or two just fall out, or one sticks out. It's kind of like poking out, and then I'm like, oh, this is the one I'm supposed to grab. Some people like to cut the deck, where they just open it up and then take from the second half. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but do what feels right for you. Switch it up some days. Be like, oh, today I want to shuffle and see what comes out. Next day, cut the deck. You know, have fun with it. Don't overthink it too much. There's no wrong way to do it. But in the beginning, take a full tarot deck, okay? This is, I love this deck. This is the Light Seers Tarot. This has a lot of really modern images. But let's use the first deck I ever worked with. This is the Wild Unknown. And I love the art on this deck, so that's what drew me to it. But I would shuffle, and I like to just have the cards come out. So there's one comes out. You kind of do like a messy shuffle, you know? Okay, perfect. So 5 cards came out. I would usually do like 2 or 3 at a time just to like learn. So we'll put these 2 to the side. So we have 3 cards here. We have the Mother of Cups, the Hermit, and the Mother of Pentacles. So what I would do is after I pull a few cards for myself, I would go to my guidebook if I couldn't remember all the meanings. And I would look at the meanings, and I would see how those meanings could relate to my life. I would make a story out of it, because that helped me remember the meanings of the cards when I could relate them to my own energy, things I've been experiencing in the present moment, or things I've experienced in the past, or maybe something I'm trying to manifest for the future. And once I did that, I would keep going. I would do 3 more, and then 3 more. You could do 1 at a time or 2 at a time, whatever you feel guided to. I would go through the entire deck, you guys, and this was a fun way for me to learn. Because even though I had to keep referring to my guidebook and all of my notes, I could correlate the meanings to my own life. And it really helped me remember the meanings of the cards. And it was more fun than just like making flashcards and drilling yourself, which is, you know, important. I did that as well. But I think this is just a really fun way of memorizing the meanings. So let's just read these few just to like give you an idea. So when I see these 3, I'm going to turn them so I can look at them. Because sometimes the meanings of the cards as well aren't necessarily what messages you're going to get as well. You'll realize that as you continue to learn. Sometimes you'll just look at the imagery and you'll get a certain emotion. Like when I see this Mother of Pentacles, it has a deer with her little baby, and she's almost like nurturing the deer. And the Mother of Cups can talk about this is a little bit different than the traditional deck, because this would be the Queen of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups. So my deck is a little bit different, but it's the same representation. Okay, so the Mother of Cups talks about intuitive gifts and also being very nurturing as well. So I get a lot of nurturing energy from this. And then the Hermit, this talks about going within, and there's a turtle on there, which also means a slowing down. Turtles can represent slowing down, something I've learned over time. So for me, it's just continuing. I've really been learning how to slow down, being more in my feminine energy. And this is a reminder to keep going in that direction. Keep staying in it, keep slowing down. You're breaking a lot of habits from your past, from my past. So keep doing that. Keep loving yourself. And you're on the right path. This is kind of like confirmation for me as well. So that's just how I read it for myself. But, you know, there's no wrong way to read tarot. And if you pull cards, you know, and I pull cards, and they could be the same cards, we're both going to get different messages. We're both going to get different interpretations. Even if we're both reading the cards for me. I pull cards for me, and you pull cards for me. We're still going to get different messages out of it. Some might line up and be similar, but we all have our own unique interpretation. So while you're learning tarot, also look at the images. How do the images make you feel? Look at the colors. Look at the numbers, right? Because certain numbers can represent different meanings. Don't overwhelm yourself with it. If you don't know the meanings behind certain numbers, then don't get into that. But if you recognize something like 11111 and you're like, oh, it's 1111, and I've been seeing that on the clock a lot, you know, you can put those pieces together. So really bond with your deck. And before I read for myself, before I read for another person, I set my intentions out loud. I think it's really powerful. I set the intention for protection, right? Because we can burn sage and we can, you know, have our crystals and things like that to clear the energy. However, those things aren't completely necessary. We just need to have a confident mindset that our energy is protected, and also to set the intention that it is, because our words are going to be more powerful than anything outside of us, because we have everything we need within, right? So I always set the intention. I connect with source. I say, okay, spirit guides, I'm about to do a reading. I ask that your presence be here. I connect to source energy, and then I connect with the person that I'm reading for. I connect to them. You don't have to do this. This is just something that I like to do. It's like a little ritual before. I connect to, let's say it's Melissa. I connect to Melissa, her higher self, and her guides, and I thank the universe for bringing us together. I thank the universe for my gifts. I get in a really deep state of gratitude before, and I set the intention as well that the messages that will come through will be clear, that I will help inspire the person. I will give them love, clarity, and anything that they need to hear on their path, right? So I set the intention that things will go smoothly. I also set this new intention lately that we will laugh and have fun, and that there will be a lot of healing as well, because I mean, laughter is the best medicine. So I love when I'm in a reading with somebody and we just have a really good laugh about something, but it's still really powerful. We're still learning a lot and growing, but having fun at the same time, because life shouldn't be so serious, right? It shouldn't be so heavy. And you'll realize how powerful those intentions are and how those things will come true. So I really encourage you to implement that before you read for anybody or yourself. Also, okay, when you first start reading, if you're really new to it, what I did at first was I started reading for friends and family. Now, I must say that it is harder, I think, you know, it could be different for you guys, but I think it is harder to read for family and friends because you already know them so well, right? You already know a lot about them, and a lot of us want approval from our family, right, or our close friends. So there's that, it almost can make you more nervous reading for them because you don't want them to think like you're crazy or you're going in the wrong direction or you shouldn't be reading tarot. You know, you can almost make up or feel judgment from them, even if they're not judgmental people. You can start to feel more insecure. At least that's how it was for me. So I just made it fun. I made it light. I didn't try to take it too seriously when I did it with my family. And I told them, hey, like, you know, a lot of these messages that come up, they might be things I already know about you, but let's just keep an open mind. Maybe there's something that you don't see in your life, or maybe I can just help bring a fresh perspective to an energy that you're feeling, you know? And that's it. Leave it at that. So, you know, don't put pressure on yourself. And literally when I first started reading for people, like I would pull cards out and I'd be like, okay, they would sit there, right? Because I was doing them in person. Because this happened, I started learning right before the pandemic. So I got my first tarot deck in January of 2020. And then I didn't start reading until about March. Yeah, it was March for my friends and family. So, and that's like right when the pandemic started. So I would have them sit in front of me. And I did some virtual, like with some of my family that lived long distance. I would set up FaceTime and do it that way. And I would lay out the cards. Sometimes I'd lay out a bunch at once, or a few at a time, whatever I felt guided to. And I'd say, okay, give me a few minutes and just take deep breaths and relax, and I'm just going to concentrate. And I would have them sit there, and I would go through my guidebook, and I would look at the cards, and I would read, and I was like, and I told them before, I was like, I'm still learning the cards. I have to use my guidebook. I have to use my notes. So I'd go to my notes, and, if I wasn't sure what the message was, I would just explain to them the meaning behind each card. So, we'll pull these two cards. We have the Chariot, and we have the Hierophant. Okay. So the Chariot can represent fast-moving energy. It can represent having a drive to go towards your goals, having new ambition, a new excitement for life. It also can talk about balancing energies. So sometimes I would just start talking about what the cards mean, right? And say, okay, and then with the Hierophant, this could be that you started learning something new, or you found a new teacher, or you're looking for more growth, or, I would start talking about the meanings. And then if I still wasn't sure what the meaning was behind it, I'd be like, well, are you looking for a teacher, or did you start teaching yourself, or, like, is there a new ambition towards learning something? And then I would just ask them, and see what comes through for them, because you'd be surprised by how little you really have to say for clarity to come through to them. Like, oh, they'll probably be like, oh, it's probably talking about this part of my life. Or they might be like, no, I don't know. Say, okay, pull a few more cards. Keep going, Don't overthink it, because sometimes messages come through for people. One of my friends, when I first started reading for her, all this stuff was coming through about her traveling and, like, getting a new job and all this stuff, and she was looking at me like I was insane. She was just like, the whole time, and it was intimidating to read for her, because she was just like, and I was just like, okay, I can't breathe, but I'm going to keep going. And so I just keep reading, and some things clicked with her once in a while. There was a few times where she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So literally probably 6 months later, she calls me, and she's like, Megan, oh my gosh, everything that you said came true. I didn't know what you were talking about when you were, like, traveling and having to be living somewhere else, but everything you said happened, and I just had to tell you, and, I didn't know for 6 months. And that was the universe being like, Megan, you just have to trust what's coming out of your mouth. You just have to keep talking, and if it doesn't make sense, you can tell them, like, maybe this will make sense over time, because sometimes that's how it works with readings. Sometimes it makes sense right away. Sometimes you're digging more into the past. Sometimes but when you're digging a lot into the future, which her reading was predominantly about, I wasn't going to know for a while, and I just had to surrender and trust that I gave her the information she needed to hear. So every reading is so different and so unique, and I love that about tarot. And the thing I learned, the hardest thing for me to learn when reading tarot was to surrender. Because I'm the kind of person that likes to control things, and I have struggled with perfectionism, which I know is a source of my own trauma. We're not going to get into all of that. But what I also realized is that when I would lay out cards, I wouldn't understand what the meaning was for somebody. I was just like, I don't know what the message is. It wasn't clear. But as soon as I just started talking, the messages would come. So I would just be like, okay, we have the Mother of Pentacles, and we have the Hermit, and we have the Hierophant, and I would pick one card to just start talking about the meaning of that card, right? I would just start talking, like, anything that came through, or just the meaning of a specific card. And then as I started talking, I would get a message, and I would be like, oh, this, and oh, that. Like, Spirit wanted me to just dive into the water. Like, you dive in, you just start talking, and the messages will come. And that's how it is for me a lot of the time. Now, since I'm further along in my practice, I can usually get the message before I start speaking, but not always. Not always. Sometimes I'll pull cards, and I'll tell the reader, or not the reader, I'll tell my client, I guess you would say, what cards are coming through, but I'd be like, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but we'll come back to it. Let's pull some more cards. Let's see what other energies are coming, and usually it all comes together at the end. like one person I was pulling cards for, and I asked for their overall energy, and the first card that came out was an oracle card that said friendship. And I was like, okay, maybe they're looking for friendship, or maybe they're trying to strengthen a friendship that they already have. Like, it was a weird energy to pull out for their, usually I'll get like the Six of Swords, you know, or the Three of Swords, or the Nine of Cups, and it's a very, it makes sense to me, it's an emotion. But friendship was just like, what? And I had to keep pulling cards, and then as we started talking, and we started, you know, reading more messages, it completely made sense, and it was multiple meanings behind the friendship card. It was friends that she needed to confide in. It was a new friend in her life. It was, we talked about friends from her past. Like, there was so much clarity to come into her life about friendship. And it had multiple different meanings, and I wasn't supposed to know right away. And that's why I couldn't decipher the card meaning, because I had to just keep going and trust that it would circle back. And then sometimes I'll pull cards and I'm like, we'll come back to that. And then I don't go back to it, you know, because it wasn't important, or there was a more important message, or, you know, something like that too. So sometimes there's cards that I pull in my spread that I don't really incorporate with the reading. That will happen too. Don't feel like you have to, like, oh, every card has to mean something and I have to get a message from each card. It doesn't make sense. Say, oh, we'll come back to it, or we won't, and pull more cards, right? That really helps me. And I wish I would have known that before I started reading tarot, because I was always like, I have to decipher every single card. And I think it's really powerful to incorporate oracle cards with the tarot cards. So tarot cards, you know, you really have to study to learn. You can't, at least I have found, you can't just start reading them. But oracle cards, you can just read them. Oracle cards have messages on them, and they're very clear. Well, for the most part. Like this oracle card, this is waking the lion. Basically, that's waking the lion inside of you. And lions usually tend to go along with courage. So I think courage when I see this card. These aren't the easiest ones to decipher. Let me pick up a different deck. Walking away. Yeah. So this card says walking away, and basically you're walking away from a situation, or you're walking into something new. So when you pull the tarot cards, you can pull confirmation from different oracle decks to work with. And I do have a whole video about decks that I use, so if you need some like advice or suggestions, I'll link that video down below. And this oracle card says 5th chakra, Archangel Gabriel. So this could be that Gabriel is working with you. 5th chakra is the throat chakra. So this could talk about, you know, you having a gift of speaking, or maybe you have a throat chakra blockage and you need to speak up. But yeah, getting confirmation, like pull 3 tarot cards and then say, okay, Spirit, I want 3 oracle cards to help confirm these messages, and see what comes through, and it will help you put the pieces together. You don't have to work with oracle cards, but I think they're beautiful and I love them, and it just makes the process more fun. Another tip you can do too as well, something that I did before I even got my first tarot deck, I had an oracle deck, and I read a few people just with my oracle cards. You don't have to use tarot, you can just use oracle. And it was much easier at the time because I didn't know tarot yet, right? So I was reading for them, and I barely knew what I was doing. I was just doing it for fun. But it was easier to decipher. I was using my Goddess Oracle deck, this one. Oops, one card just flew out. This deck. And the messages are just really clear. Like this one says fertility. It is the perfect time for you to start new projects, access new ideas, give birth to new conditions. So that's easy, right? It's like, oh, it's time for you to start something new, like a new creative project, or it's time to start a new job, or like, is there something new that you want to go after, and ask them. Because a lot of the times with, I know every medium's very different, or not medium, I'm also a medium, but tarot reader, psychic, everyone's so different with their process. Like, I've had readings done by psychics where they just talk the whole time. You know, you're on the phone and they talk, they go, and at the end you can ask them questions, you take notes, and that's a perfect way to do it. My style's a little different. I like to have a conversation. I do everything virtual, so it's like FaceTime, so I can really connect with the person. And I like to ask questions because, you know, I'm a guide. That's how I see myself. I'm guiding you. You have all this knowledge within you, and I'm helping like shine a light. Basically shine a flashlight so you can see it. Right? So one of my favorite moments in my sessions are when I'm reading for a client and I'm just like reading the cards, and then we start talking about something, and then they all of a sudden are just talking, you know, getting things off their chest, and they're like, oh, oh my gosh, I get it. And they're like, and they have this like light bulb moment, but it was from something that they said, right? That's really powerful because you guys, when you come to me, you have all the information inside. I'm just giving you a safe space and to talk about it, and I'm reading your energy, and I'm helping you, yeah, because I can see things that are coming in the future when spirit will let me, but really, you guys have the information. I'm just channeling your energy into the cards, bringing things to light, bringing things to your awareness, right? Maybe it's something from your subconscious. So I like to have a conversation. I like to say, okay, this is how I start my readings too. Okay, so what I do before I even got on the phone with somebody is I like to pull cards for their current energy. So I do my intentions, set my intentions in my prayers, and I say, okay, Spirit, let me know their current energy. And so I'll pull a few cards just to see where they're at. And then I'll pull a few more to just see the theme of the reading if I can get anything. So when I talk to them on the phone, I'm like, okay, so I did pull some cards. I just want to go over your current energy first. I want to see where you're at. I want to get grounded in the present moment. And then afterwards, I'll ask you what questions you have for me and what intentions you have. And I just think that process works really beautifully because you're kind of like confirming your gifts for them in the beginning, like, in case, because a lot of people going into readings can be really nervous. So you're confirming your gifts, and they're like, yeah, that is how I feel. And I'm like, okay, so, and that, sometimes I'll go into some of the other cards I pulled, sometimes then I'll go, okay, what questions you have, what intentions, and we'll kind of go from there and have a conversation. And if something comes through, I'm like, okay, there's something coming through with your mother, and it's a habit that you picked up, or it's something that happened when you were little, or like a traumatizing thing happened when you were with your house or something, and like, what is that? Like, I don't have all of the information. I'm not God. I'm a part of God. I'm not God. It's like working together to put the pieces together. So I'll be like, okay, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this happened when I was 5. And I'm like, okay, that's a big part of what's going on with your current energy. So when we start to look at that, because it's hard to look at things that happened when we were that little and release trauma from that when we barely remember it. Because most of our trauma, our learning, most of everything happens from when we're 0 to 7. So, and that's a very hard time for us to remember. So it's about putting the pieces together and having a conversation and just opening up to that and being okay with not having all the information. There are some really powerful psychics that probably don't need people to say anything and can just spew out and just give all this information. That's great. But I think that can put an unrealistic expectation on us sometimes. And I had to really learn how to let go of that because I wanted to, be this perfect psychic that knew everything and that, I wouldn't have to ask you a question. I wouldn't have to bring you into the conversation because I could just tell you everything. But for me, the conversation is so important in so many different levels because giving them the ability to talk. A lot of my my tarot readings are very therapeutic. That's my style, if you guys haven't noticed. There's a lot of counseling that happens. And so I think it's really important for the person that I'm reading for to be able to speak, to be able to vent, and create that safe space where they can talk about things that they normally don't talk about, because I create a space that's non-judgmental, and it can be hard to find sometimes in our lives. So I think that's really important just to realize as well. Another thing you can do in the beginning, before you even start working with clients, something that I did, that I actually had a session with the tarot priest. I don't know if you guys follow her. Her readings are amazing. So I had a session with her right after I started reading tarot because I wanted some more guidance and I wanted help building my business too because she's good with that aspect of tarot as well. So I asked her, I was like, how do I, get clients and how do I do this? And she told me, she's like, well, Megan, people have to build trust with you first because, being a psychic is very different. Being a tarot reader is very different. And there's a lot of judgment from society. And there's a lot, and then rightfully so, because I'm sure there's a lot of fake ones out there. There's a lot of people that don't know what they're doing, or they're lying, or they're manipulating you. So people have their guard up already. So you have to learn, you have to gain people's trust. So showing your skills online, right? I started doing pick-a-cards on my Instagram, right? And then I started on YouTube, and I started just doing pick-a-cards because I just wanted to practice. I'm like, if it doesn't resonate, it's okay. I just need to do it, and I just need to have fun with it, right? But she told me, her name's Bree. Bree told me that I needed to start offering free one-question readings. So I was like, okay. She's like, yeah, just let people submit one question, you pull cards for them, and then you can send them a recording of their reading, or you could write it down if you want. And I was like, that's a good idea. I was so nervous to do it because I didn't completely trust in my own self at that point and my ability. So I was like, well, it's free, so if it doesn't resonate, they can't be mad at me, right? So that's what I did. And I went on my Instagram stories and I was like, hey, who wants a free reading? Like, submit your question. And I got a ton of people, actually, that wanted them. So I did them all, and every one of them had at least part of it that resonated. It wasn't 100%, and I really was hard on myself in the beginning. I thought that I had to have 100% of it right. Now I aim for about 70 to 80%. That's my goal. I don't try to be perfect with it because it's just not realistic. It's not realistic with anything. And so that was really good for me because it really helped boost my confidence. It gave me a lot of practice, and I could do it at my own time. So I wasn't feeling rushed. It wasn't live, right? It wasn't like the person was right there and I had to read for them. I could really take my time. I could really study the cards, and then I would send a voice recording, and I would ask for 100% honest feedback. You know, tell me what resonated, tell me what didn't, tell me if this helped you, you know, and I would just, anything that came up. And when I say stuff that comes up, it's more like a thought for me. I know it's different for every psychic. I know some mediums or some psychics, they at least I've seen them on TV where they're like, oh, it's very clearly outside my ear, or this or that. For me, it's more like a thought in my head. That's how I would describe it. I soon learned that I had clairaudience, and that's what clairaudience is. I know now I have clairvoyance too, which I'm working on strengthening those gifts, and I have clairsentience, which is the psychic gift of feeling. But clairaudience is psychic hearing. And at first I was like, no, I don't. When somebody told me, my friend told me, oh yeah, you have clairaudience, because she's an intuitive. I was like, do I? I don't know. I don't hear anything. But it made sense once I started to learn what that meant. It's more like it's your own voice. It's your own thoughts. And it can be very confusing when you're reading tarot, especially if it's something that's coming through from the future, because you're like, did I make that up? Like, you guys, when I read tarot, or even when I do my medium readings, when I'm channeling past loved ones, I keep telling you guys this, but I feel like I'm making it up. I feel like I'm making up a story. And you are kind of making up a story, but it is true. You just have to trust that those thoughts that come through are what's supposed to be told, what's supposed to be heard, and not doubt it, right? So know that. I know it's different. Clairvoyance, people can see things, but it's like seeing, like if you're imagining something in your head, like you're imagining being at the beach, that's what the vision would look like a really hazy, almost dreamlike projection, like a thought, like you're seeing a thought. It's different for everybody, but I just want to explain kind of how it is for me, because maybe this will help you. And then clairsentience is psychic feeling. So that's another thing that I've been learning to work with, because you can feel the emotions that they feel. So if you're reading for somebody and all of a sudden you get really anxious, or you get super tired, or your stomach starts to hurt, or your back hurts, that can be something that the person's experiencing. And I've noticed that a lot, especially when I do a virtual one-on-one session. Most of the time, not all times, but most of the time before my session, I can tell what the person's energy is like. I can feel it. Like sometimes I feel their energy and it's so heavy and it's so anxious, and all of a sudden I start doubting my tarot abilities, and I'm like, oh, I'm not ready for this reading, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, this isn't my energy, like this is their energy. And then as soon as I get on the call with them, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, is this how you're feeling? And I start to describe what I feel, and they're like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. And I'm like, yeah, I feel it, girl. Like, that's heavy. And also, this gift is powerful because when I do have a client coming in with a lot of trauma, a lot of health issues, just not in the best place of their life, right? A lot of fatigue. It's really good to know to what extent it is, what level that's at, because if it is really heavy, I know to come into the reading really slowly with a ton of compassion, and focus mostly on connecting with the person and bringing them love, more than just the messages. It's more just about building a relationship and building their trust. So really honing in on that. If you're pulling cards for somebody and all of a sudden you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing, this is crazy, it might be yours, but it also might be their emotions. Maybe they doubt themselves. Maybe they have a lot of insecurities and it's coming through how you feel into the cards. Like, just pay attention to that, just something to be aware of. Also, it can be a lot to read for somebody, to read cards for somebody, and there's always main principles that I focus on, and I leave the rest. Like, the rest can come through, but these are the main things I focus on before a session with somebody. I focus on bringing a lot of love and compassion, because that's the most healing thing, right? And the world needs more of that. We know that, right? We know this world needs more love and compassion. So bringing a ton of compassion, okay? That is the most important, or one of the most important. The second thing is listening. Listen like your life depends on it. You know, it can be easy for us if the client or whoever you're reading for, right, starts to talk, and all of a sudden you're getting messages, and you're like, oh, I need to tell them this, and I need to tell them that. And you can almost stop listening to them because you're thinking about what you're going to say, or you're thinking about these messages. Let them go in and out. It might be a really good message, but listen 100%. If that message or that idea or whatever you want to say to them, if it's meant to be, it'll come back, okay? Listen, because people need to be listened to. It's so important, and you're really going to help them more. Even if you forget what you were going to say, I promise, just listen. Whenever you start to think of something and you realize you're not listening, I hear that from spirit too, that I'm like, wait, what am I supposed to say? Or I don't know what I'm supposed to say to them. They're like, just listen. I hear that sometimes. I'm like, oh yeah, just listen. And then finally when they're done talking, something will come through. And it's always really powerful, but you have to trust and listen. You'll be rewarded for that, okay? Another thing is validation. Validation is so important, okay? People are going through struggles, and if they're coming to you for a tarot reading, they have issues, they have things that they want help with most of the time. I would say like 90% of the time. The other percent of the time, people are just coming in with like a fun mindset and like, oh, whatever, it'll just be fun. I just want to meet you. I just want to do this. Like, you know. But most of the time, people come in with some trauma, with something that they want help with, okay? And when they start to express how they feel, and you start to see it in the cards how they feel, give them validation, right? I cannot stress that enough, because if you're talking to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, you see the world like that, but this is how you should see the world, and you should look at it in a positive light. Of course it's good to help redirect their energy when needed, like if they're in a really pessimistic state, but make sure you give them space at some point in the reading to validate their readings. You know, you could say anything like, oh wow, I understand what you're saying. That sounds really difficult. That's really hard. That also shows that you're listening. Because if you just try to start giving them messages like to help them without really validating their feelings, their thoughts, their perceptions, even if it's a limited way of thinking, or the perception that they have is very negative, it's still their reality. So validation, so important. And then the last thing for me, I think is so important, is the connection you make with a person. We're all craving connection, especially in the spiritual community. It's hard to meet like-minded souls, especially in the beginning, the first year or two. It's harder to meet if you didn't grow up in that environment, right? If you were kind of the black sheep of the family, or you just started your spiritual path recently, or even a couple years ago, and you're still trying to make spiritual friends. When you're giving a reading for somebody, that's a really strong connection. And I always believe that anybody I read for is part of my soul family. So building that relationship and that connection is so important, especially, I'm filming this right now at the end of 2020. People are craving connection because people are stuck in their homes, right? So that is so, so important. So those are the 4 things that I focus on. Show love, show compassion, listen to your heart's content. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know what I mean. Validate their emotions, their feelings, and connect with them. And also, too, I think something that helps is, when I'm reading tarot, if somebody's going through a similar experience that I went through, if I feel guided to, I'll mention it. I'll be like, I know exactly what you're feeling. That's really hard because, this is something I went through a year ago. I won't dwell in it. I won't go on about it, but I'll mention it. I'll say, I had this experience, blah, 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 and I'll talk about it for maybe a minute. And so they know, like, I actually know what they're talking about, and then they feel more connected to me. I think that's important too, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm willing to listen to someone if they have actually been through similar experiences that I've been through. Because then I'm like, oh, you get it. You get it, you know? Otherwise, I'm like, do you really get it? You're saying that you get it, but, like, have you been through this, you know? We can be kind of skeptical. So don't be afraid to be a little vulnerable. I know, you know, especially when I first started doing this, I had this idea that I couldn't share with people what was going on with me, because, you know, the session's all about them, and, you know, when it comes to therapists and counselors out there, that's like one of their rules. At least that's what I've heard, is you don't talk about yourself, it's all about the patient. And I can see why that's good, and I think, you know, 90 to 95% of it should be about the person. But I think there's that 5 to 10% where it's okay to open up a little bit, as long as it's not something you are dwelling in. It's something that you've already worked through, and you don't give too much time and attention to it. You know, just bring it up, mention it. Say, I understand what you're saying. I completely get it. I had a similar experience about a year ago with an ex that I dated. He was very abusive, so I understand what you're saying. You know, if somebody comes to you with an abusive relationship, it's really, really hard, and I'm glad that you're opening up to me about this, because this is really important to talk about. Right? I mean, I feel like I'm, like, giving lessons on how to be a counselor right now. Like, this is just how my sessions go, and I just think it makes them more powerful. So another thing I did in the beginning was, after I started doing the one-question readings, I would reach out to people on Instagram. Now, I tried to find people that followed me, or that I kind of knew, and some of them I didn't know at all, that had 1,000 followers or more. So you guys, I messaged so many people, and only like 10 or 20% of them responded. And I was like, hey, you know, I'm giving away free virtual sessions. I just asked for a shout out on your story, only if it resonates, right? Of course, like, you don't want them to shout it out if it was like, oh, it sucked. So, like, if it resonates and it helps you, I just ask that you give me a shout out on your Instagram story, or something like that. So I did that, and I got, you know, I think I got like 10 people that offered to do it. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know. It was like a friend of friend. Some of it was just random people. And 2 of the people that I gave it to have actually become my friends. So it was like really powerful way of making a spiritual connection. So that was really cool. But I was nervous, and I told them, I said, you know, I'm still learning, like, be easy with me, I just want to have fun, we'll see what comes through. And they were open, because they were like, this is free, this is cool, because I get to connect with a like-minded person. And Spirit really brought in the most warming, kind people that I could have asked for. You know, really just open and excited. So that was awesome too. So I definitely recommend doing that, and that will help bring more people to your page as well, if you're doing this on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, because I think it's really important to use social media to help build your business, especially right now with the pandemic going on. I think it's a really powerful tool. It has been for me. I also have a video on my YouTube about why I don't do negative predictions. So if you're learning tarot and you haven't checked out that one, it's only like 4 or 5 videos ago, so it's pretty close to this one. And I'll try to remember to put that link as well down below in the description box. But it's basically, I know some people get their readings done, they get scared that, like, oh, what if they say something bad is going to happen in the future? But I'm not going to get completely into that, because I already made a whole video about that. But if you haven't checked that one out, make sure you do, because it's also more about my process and why I only do positive, uplifting predictions. They can still be really intense, don't get me wrong. There could still be tower moments coming through, but it really makes sense to me. Also, I've noticed when I read tarot, sometimes for people, they'll ask questions and I won't be getting the answer, and that's because they're not supposed to know. And you just have to be honest with them. Be like, honestly, no answer's coming through. Like, it's better to just say that than try making something up. Because we're not supposed to have all the answers. Like, if we did, we'd be God, and it just doesn't make sense, right? We don't have all the answers. We can help guide people. We can help say, okay, I see something like this coming, or maybe it's this way, but, like, I don't know. Like, sometimes people ask questions about their love life and things like that, or when will I meet my soulmate? Like, I want to know the date. I want to know a specific time. And You just have to be like, well, let's try to pull a time card, right? And for time, I've learned this. Gosh, there's a lot of videos I want to link below. Kino Tarot, she has a video about. I'm gonna link all these videos below. She has a video of how to read time through tarot, and that really helped me. So I would try to pull certain cards mean certain times, like the Four of Wands. I would say that's like 4 days. The Five of Swords would be 5 weeks. The Three of Cups would be 3 months, and the Four of Pentacles would be 4 years. That's how I do it. Everybody doesn't do it differently. So Pentacles are years, Cups are months, Swords are weeks, and Wands are days. Okay, but sometimes I'll pull like the Three of Wands, but 3 days doesn't make sense, so I'll be like, oh, it's around 3 months. So sometimes I'll switch them around, but I just go with my intuition. But so I'll be like, okay, let's pull a time card. Sometimes a time card will come out, and I'll be like, oh, it might be this. But if it's a long, time card, I might not even tell them. Because if it's like, they're asking when they're going to meet their soulmate, and the Ten of Pentacles comes out, and that's 10 years, like, I'm not going to tell them 10 years. Like, if somebody would have told me that I wouldn't meet my person till 33 when I was 23, it would have devastated me. Go with your intuition. Like, I don't like to hold information back, but there's so much that can change within 10 years, even within like 6 months. Say like it says that their soulmate's going to come through in 6 months. It's a probability. It's a probable timeline. Things could change. They could meet them in sooner than that. Things could happen where they meet them later. It's all based off their current energy, and our energy is always changing, always expanding. So even though you read something at a certain time, there's so many reasons and ways where that could change. So sometimes if I pull something that's like, 6 months, and they're looking for a new job, and I say, it says within the next 6 months, or I'll say within, because it could happen a lot sooner. But keep doing this, or I'll tell them, work on this blockage, work on this belief pattern, start using these new mantras, because I like to give tools and things that I've used to help me on my path, to help them. I'm like, keep using these things, and you will get to this goal that you have, like, within probably sooner than 6 months. Because sometimes those time cards can be disappointing if it's not what we pictured in our head. The times can always change, and everything can always change. Like, I'll read someone's tarot and I'll be like, oh, in 6 months this is going to happen, or I think this is going to happen. But it could change. That could not happen, or a version of that could happen, right? It's something similar, but not quite the same. Timelines are always changing, and that's important to know. So be careful when you're doing time predictions for people. And sometimes I'll pull cards and like nothing comes out, and like no times come out, and it's like the Mother of Cups comes out, the King of Pentacles comes out, the Hierophant, and I'm like, you're not supposed to know, sorry. And most people are pretty cool about it. They're like, oh, okay, thanks for trying, Most people would be like, oh, she couldn't even tell me when I'm getting engaged. Like, I haven't met someone like that yet. Maybe that will happen sometime in my life where somebody gets mad at me, but for the most part, people are usually pretty cool. Another thing, too, you'll realize when you're reading for somebody, or even when I do pick a cards on YouTube, there's always like 1 or 2 piles that really resonate. Usually all the piles resonate to a certain extent in my own life, but there's always a couple where I'm like, am I even reading for this person, or is it for me? But, everybody that we read for, everybody that comes into our life is such a huge reflection of us, right? Our reality is a mirror to our life. So when you meet people and you read for people, there's going to be similarities. You're going to help people that have gone through similar struggles that you've gone through. That's how it works. That's how I've noticed it works. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a client and I'm reading for them and I'm like, are you my twin? Like, how? Everything you're saying is like, I feel like I'm listening to myself from, 6 months ago or a year ago or 3 years ago. It's just the same. And it's really amazing because I'm like, oh, I know exactly what to do, and I know I know how to help you because the energy is so similar. And then sometimes I get clients where I'm like, okay, your energy is similar to what I've experienced, but you're going through different situations. But the energy is the same, the emotion's the same. And I try to focus on that, or if I don't know exactly how to help them, I try to come up with a plan to help them find the resources that can help them. If I'm like, okay, I'm not an expert in this, but like, let's try to find out a way. Let's try to make some steps. Let's see if there's another person out there that can help you with this other part of your life. Because when you help somebody, when you read their tarot or do, any kind of psychic reading for somebody, you're not supposed to help them. You're not supposed to radically help them with like every problem they have. You're not supposed to just fix them like that. or have every session's not going to be super profound. They're not. Some are going to be really profound, and it's going to be like, whoa, I didn't even know I could do that. But not every session's going to be like that. And I think understanding that, as we go through our spiritual journey, our healing journey, like a lot of different people help us. Like I can think about that in my life. I worked with a lot of different people, or I met a lot of different people, or I dated different men, and all of them like helped me in some sort of way. And they all were part of this like team put together in the universe to help me get to where I am today. And that's kind of how it is when you help somebody. Like you're one of the people. You are one person that's supposed to help part of their healing journey, right? Don't put it all on you. Don't put that pressure on you that you have to like radically change their perception or make them feel so much better. Because when you put that pressure on yourself to like help somebody in a certain way, it can be very exhausting, and you'll be drained after you read for somebody. Because when I first started reading for people, I was like, why am I so tired? I thought that I was like absorbing their energy, which that could be part of it, but I think a big part of it was that I was putting so much pressure on myself to like give them this like incredible reading that's just life-changing and everything gets better after that. And it was almost like a subconscious thing, right? Because I was just putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I wanted everything so badly to resonate because I needed that confirmation for myself because I was still new at the time. And sometimes I still give too much of myself, and I notice it now during my readings where I'm like, take a breath. Take a breath. You've already given them so much information. Relax, But yeah, just being aware of that. Just give what you give what comes up, and learn to be accepting of that and be okay with that, and know that whatever you shared with that person, whatever came up was enough, and it was just what they needed for this part in their journey. And that, maybe you'll work with them again, or they'll work with somebody else, and they're going to be guided to where they need to go. And the process might be taking longer for them than you would like, but it's all happening perfectly. And accepting that within your own life, and then within their life, right, or all the people that you read for, is really going to help you protect your energy and not feel drained, and not feel let down, and not feel judgmental towards yourself. So if you guys are just starting tarot, or if you've been doing it for a while but you're a little afraid to make it public, it's going to be scary when you first start doing readings. Like if you make a YouTube channel, or if you just start reading for random people, it's always going to be a little scary. It was for me. But this is going to help empower you. You're going to come to a really confident place. It's going to take some time, but just be patient with yourself and just get out of your comfort zone, because I feel like for learning tarot has been one of the most challenging things in that aspect for me, of stepping out of my comfort zone and trusting myself and just surrendering. But really partaking in that energy really clears your solar plexus. It really clears your solar plexus. This is where we have our confidence and our self-worth and our personal empowerment. And once you start to clear and you start to get out of your comfort zone, you become more confident. And I've built a lot of more confidence than I have. I mean, you guys should watch my first pick a card. I don't know if you could tell I was nervous, but I could barely breathe. I think I hit it pretty well. I've always been, I'm not proud of the strength, but I've hid my emotions most of my life. Not anymore, but in the past, ever since I was little, I was really good at hiding my emotions, and that's what caused me so many health problems and draining of my energy. But now I have this ability to kind of hide when I'm a little nervous, because even still making these videos, I still get a little bit nervous. Not nearly as much as I used to, but I still get a little bit. I'm still working through that. These things take time. Plus, I worked in the restaurant industry forever, and you have to like put on a fake face like every day and just pretend you're happy in front of people. So I guess my acting skills got good in that regard. But I promise you, I was freaking out and I was nervous. This wasn't a natural thing for me, like speaking in front of a camera. So we're reading people's tarot. I mean, it is natural for me in one sense, but in the sense of getting out of your comfort zone, that's not so natural. But if you guys are thinking about starting a YouTube video, I mean, just freaking do it, man. Just do it. Have fun with it. Don't overthink it. To me, I first found pick a card readings. It was about a year ago from right now. Yeah, because we're about to hit to Christmas. We're about to enter Christmas. And it was in December of 2019 when I first found pick a cards. I found Star Girl, the Practical Witch, and I just couldn't believe how much they resonated and how much they were helping me. And I thought it was so powerful that I could pick a card in a reading and get clarity as to what I was currently feeling, get some tools as to what I should do to help me, and then also get some insight into the future. And then I could pick a card from a video that was filmed a year ago. Like it just blew my mind that this kind of therapy was available to us. And I thought, well, I've always wanted to help people. I really like this style, and why not just do it myself and help people? And also, if you have that feeling of, well, I shouldn't start my YouTube channel because there's already so many people doing it, or like I shouldn't do it because there's already a lot of people out there doing it, and you know, what different perspective do I have to bring? Like it won't be that good. You do have a unique perspective to bring. I'm here to tell you that right now because I felt that too. I felt that like there was too many people doing this, I shouldn't do it, but I had to talk myself out of that because that's a limiting belief, because you can think that with anything. Like, say you're going to school and you're like, oh, I shouldn't be a teacher because there's too many teachers, or I shouldn't be a doctor because there's so many doctors, you know, or I shouldn't. You can apply that to any kind of job, any kind of hobby, but every single person has such a unique ability, and I can really see that now that I've been doing it for a while. How my readings are different from other people. But, you know, at first I didn't see that, and I didn't know that. I just felt like I was kind of, I don't know why, I just felt insecure about it, but I knew I had to do it, not just for other people, but for me. I had to do it for me. I knew it was going to be healing, and I knew that it was going to be some sort of like fun artistic project for me because I didn't have anything like that at the time. So if you're thinking, well, I shouldn't do it because everyone's doing it, stop thinking about other people. Stop. Do it for you. If this excites you and you're excited, do it for you, and try to just have fun with it and don't overthink it, and just be easy on yourself, you guys. Okay. I hope this video helped you. If you guys have any more questions about tarot, you can put them down in the comments. If I get enough questions, I might just do a part 2 of this. We'll see. But I feel like I covered most of everything. So if you guys want to book a session with me, I have all my information down below. I'm also going to start offering personal one-on-one coaching sessions for reading tarot. So I'll probably start offering that in the new year, in 2021. I still have to figure out how I want to price that out. But if you want to work with me one-on-one for me to help you develop your intuitive gifts, a lot of my tarot readings end up being like that anyways, for a lot of you watching. I just did a reading the other day, and it was like all about her psychic abilities and her intuitive gifts and getting her started in a creative project, or finding her creativity. I'm really good at helping people find their like creative outlet, because it was really a struggle for me. So it's really been amazing to be able to do that for other people. So if you want to book a session with me, or if you want to learn tarot more one-on-one, I have all my information down below in the description box. And sending lots of love to you guys. Bye.